I'm Mark Gilfix. I'll be leading you through a meaningful talk. This is going to be an especially meaningful one to me. I'm going to tell my personal story, something I haven't really shared publicly. So I want to share my recent medical journey and 3 messages that profoundly shaped my life. This is a photo of me, sort of a fun one. This is me surfing. This is in Fiji. This is late 2018. I just turned 40 years old, and as a birthday present to myself, I went to Fiji for an incredible trip. I got scuba certified, and I love surfing and paddle surfing. And this is a photo of me on one of the most amazing waves. I got there, they got a photo of it. This was at a coral reef in the middle of nowhere. We were 15 minutes from the nearest island, just surfing these incredible waves in the middle of nowhere. But I was healthy, I was thriving, I was winning awards as a lawyer and a writer. I felt invincible, everything is great. And I was just feeling like on top of the world in many ways. And we all have our own issues and stresses, but overall I felt so good. Invincible, my health habits were good, if not great. I felt fine. But there was this bump on my leg. And in that photo, I had that bump. It was on my leg. But here's a closer view of it, and you can see that's a pretty big bump, right? And you might be thinking, well, Mark, how did you let a bump get that big on your leg? Didn't you go to the doctor? I did go to the doctor. I went to the doctor a year before this to check it out, and my doctor said, don't worry about it. If it doesn't hurt, if it moves around a little bit, you're fine. It's almost certainly a lipoma. It's this fatty tissue thing. You might have to get surgery to get it removed, but don't worry about it. Come back if it gets painful or as it gets bigger, and we can see about getting it out. And my girlfriend at the time said, hey, Mark, you really need to go in and get this checked again. It's getting bigger. So I went back. And I had some tests done, and the doctor this time ordered tests. And he said, okay, well, we'll just rule out the worst case scenario, but you're fine. As I went through these tests, I was not even stressed. I was like, whatever, okay, I'll get the test. They'll tell me what surgery I need, blah, 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 blah. We're good. They did a series of tests leading to a biopsy. So they couldn't rule out everything. So they do a biopsy. I'm waiting for the results. I wasn't even stressed. I swear, I wasn't even worried about a phone call. I was just expecting them to say, okay, Mark, you got to get this annoying surgery, okay, whatever. And then I got the phone call. A moment I'll never forget. It was April 8th, 2019, about 12:45 p.m. I was in an attorney's meeting. We have Monday attorney's meetings, and I got a phone call, 2 phone calls from Kaiser Medical Center. And I excuse myself, and I get the call. And the doctor says, hey, Mark, we got your test results, and that bump in your leg is malignant. What does malignant mean? I'm thinking, okay, well, I may have to get surgery. Okay, malignant, that's not good, but I don't know what that means. Malignant, it can mean so many different things. So I blurt out, okay, well, what's the prognosis? And I'm thinking he's going to say, well, you'll need surgery, you'll be out 4 to 6 weeks, kind of like a pro athlete. What's the prognosis after an injury when a football player hurts his knee? I was expecting that. And his response to me shook me to my core. He said, oh, it's better than 50-50. What? I was expecting him to say, you're going to recover in X weeks. And he just told me that I had, quote, better than 50-50 odds of surviving. Because you see, this wasn't just a malignant thing. It was a sarcoma, as he told me, a rare type of muscle tumor. A sarcoma in my leg. This thing, the whole time, I had a cancerous tumor in my leg. My doctor didn't even catch it a year before. Lesson, always demand tests when you're in doubt, by the way. And he quickly backed off and said, oh, well, it's probably a lot better than that. You're young. We haven't tested to see how serious it is for its spread, but, maybe it's 60 or 70-30. Either way, I went from feeling invincible on this incredible surf trip to feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I'm screwed. I'm going to die. What now? Your head's spinning. And anybody out there who's been through a call like that or a diagnosis, I think you can relate. You go into sort of shock. And this is actually a photo that I took of myself later that day. I was stunned. This is me that night, actually, when I was kind of reflecting on it. I just took a quick photo. I took some video journals too. I was stunned. Of course, I told my family right away. I did not share it with anybody outside of my inner circle. But that started me on this really scary but incredibly meaningful journey. I was, again, in shock. I didn't know what to do. And again, much of what I'm talking about here today is about what you can do in these situations. But I was facing my own mortality at 40 years old, thinking maybe I have 70-30 odds, but still I went from invincible to having a 1 in 3 chance of not being around in a couple years. And those nights were the hardest of my life as I waited for the surgery. We wanted to get second opinions. We needed to do scans. And this is me in one of the first scans that I did. It was a CT scan to make sure that it hadn't spread. And that's me just trying to make the best of it, stunned. I didn't know what to think. I'm just going through these tests. Thankfully, the scans showed that it hadn't spread. It was local, but I was told that it was a high-grade tumor, which meant it had a high risk of coming back, that it could spread in the future. So I wasn't in the clear, but I definitely needed surgery. We got multiple opinions. Everybody said, you need surgery. For sure, there was questions as to what I needed after surgery, where we really needed help, and that was scary. So I was terrified through all this. I had the surgery, though. They did a great job. So Dr. Fang at Kaiser did an amazing job. Here's a picture of my leg after they removed the tumor. So they took some of my leg muscle out with it to be extra careful. I was very lucky that it was right on the surface. They took it out. And believe it or not, so I didn't share this. And I think one lesson when you go through a diagnosis, some people want to share it with their friends and family right away. Other people are more private. Some people share it publicly. I didn't share it. I kept it to myself and to my family. I didn't want to have to keep people up to date. I was going through my own stuff. And I was determined to get meaning out of it, though. From the beginning, I said, hey, maybe this will get me, but either if it doesn't, this is going to be the most meaningful journey of my life. And believe it or not, like 2 weeks later, we had, for those of you who know our firm, we are going to start doing these again. We do annual special needs trust events where we give these huge presentations to hundreds of people about special needs planning and estate planning. So a week and a half, you see me, it's hard to see on the left, that's me with crutches. I was just coming out of that surgery. I couldn't even put weight on my leg, really. And Mike Gilfix, my dad, and I gave not one, but two-hour seminars that day to hundreds of people about estate planning and special needs planning. So ironically, I was talking about all these issues while I was going through this existential crisis of my own, but I just smiled. And when people asked, maybe some of you watching were there that day, people asked why I was on crutches. I said, I just had an injury, had to have surgery. I didn't go into it. I didn't want to talk about it. But I kept going through my life. And some people, when they go through a diagnosis, they want to take a step back. Some people want to put their head down and work. I decided to just keep working and take the time I needed, but I wanted to keep my life as normal as I could. This is a couple weeks after that. That's me. I didn't shave, you can see, for a while. Shaving was the last thing on my mind. That's me with my mom. And I bring this photo up because there were so many incredible people who helped me through that really tough time. And it's so crucial to have that circle of support. Whether you share it broadly or not, you need support. I had so many people, too many to thank here, but my mom was my superhero through it. She was my patient advocate. She was at every meeting with me. She was at every doctor's discussion. She was diving into the research about traditional treatments, non-traditional treatments, integrative medicine, holistic medicine, nutrition. So she helped me sort through all of that in such an extraordinary way. So Mom, thank you again for being there with me and for me through all of that. And that leads me to the next message that changed my life. So this was June 14th, 2019. It was around 8:45 p.m. It was a Friday night. I was at a Shabbat dinner with my sister and brother-in-law and my parents. The night before, I think it was the night before, or maybe a couple nights before, I'd been to the Warriors game. Game 6 of the NBA Finals that year. I was going to treat myself. I was like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be around in a few years. I'm going to treat myself to go to Game 6 of the NBA Finals. The Warriors lost, but it was an incredible experience. But this was like the day later. And I'm sitting at dinner and I get a message. And it was from Stanford Medical. You see, Kaiser was my primary care provider, but we'd asked for second opinions. And it took a lot of work. We finally got to the right doctor at Stanford through some neighbors who were in the Stanford Medical Center. And the head doctor of their sarcoma department, Dr. Ganju, had seen my test reports. And she said, something's a little weird here. I want us to get a sample of your tumor so we can take a second look. And Kaiser said it was a high-grade tumor, pretty dangerous, that it could come back, that my prognosis was good, but not amazing. Stanford, after weeks, and I'm still annoyed it took this long, but after weeks, they finally got a copy or a sample of the tumor and they'd looked at it. And what they found changed my life in an amazing way. This message said, hey, Mark, great news. We got a sample of the tumor. It was not high grade. It was low grade. And in plain English, when you have a low grade sarcoma, or the type that I had, that means that for the type I had and where it was caught, I was pretty much in the clear. I went from being 60, 40, 70, 30 odds of being okay to pretty much back to a normal 40-year-old. And we had them triple check it, and they were certain. They sent it to Kaiser. Kaiser actually agreed. Kaiser didn't have the right specialist looking at the beginning. Again, get a second and third opinion when you face a serious diagnosis. You never know what you're going to need to save your life. And that saved me from having to get chemotherapy or other unnecessary treatments. And this is an image of me right after that happened. I took a little video, tears of happiness here, not being stunned and just praying that it was true. And they did verify that it was true. So I went from thinking I was done to being like, hey, here's your new lease on life, Mark. What are you going to do with it? You're good. Maybe not 100%, but 98%, where you're back to, you don't have to think about this too much anymore. And we vetted it and everything. It was good. So that was a great email. And that started me on this road to recovering mentally and physically. I think I would have gotten through it mentally. I would have done it, but it would have been a lot harder. But having this news changed my life. And I hope anybody out there who gets a diagnosis gets good news later. I know that's not always the case. So December of 2019, I'm recovering on the water. I'm surfing. I'm feeling good. And I decided to go down to Los Angeles over the holidays to see some friends and to just celebrate life. So I told some of my friends what I'd been through, and I wanted to give them the good news. And I was single at the time. And so I take a trip down Highway 1 on California. Many of you have been there. Gorgeous, gorgeous, beautiful trip. This is me in Cambria on that trip. I stopped to surf on the way down before I spent time with friends in Los Angeles. And this is on the holidays, again, December 2019, before some other stuff happened in society, as we all know. And I was single, and there was this girl I'd met in 2013, and she kind of dissed me. I tried to pursue her, but she popped back in my head, and for some reason she'd been on my mind. So I reached out to her via email, and it took a couple of attempts, but she lived in LA, and I said, hey, I'm going to be in LA over the holidays, and I created a reason to get in touch with her, and I said, hey, can I get you a drink? Took multiple attempts. But this girl named Vera finally responded, gave me her number. We went on a date and we just clicked. Everything was great. It was perfect. After all these years, I finally found someone who seemed like, hey, maybe this could be really real. And I felt, having been through everything that I'd been through, that I had a real chance to start a new phase of my life and to move forward. And here's me and Vera in the first week that I re-met her. This is in December of 2019. So I meet this amazing girl. She's smart, she's funny, she's beautiful, and we just have this connection, and it's great. And I'd been through my journey, and I shared it with her, and she was so supportive of what I had just been through, and wonderful about it. And this is right around February of 2019, right before the pandemic. This is us. We took a trip to Kona, Hawaii. This is us just celebrating life, healthy, getting ready for the next phase of life. And that set up the next part of this story. So everything was great. COVID hits. It actually let us spend more time together because Vera was living in LA. She got to spend a bunch of time at my house working remotely in San Francisco and in the Bay Area. So we spent weeks together. We got closer and closer. And one day, Vera was taking a shower in my house. And I don't have loofahs or sponges. She usually did. So she was using just her hands to soap herself up. And she felt a bump on her breast. And because I had just been through my journey and shared everything with her, she said, I'm going to get this checked right away. Maybe the old me might have said, I'll wait till my next doctor's appointment. But because she knew what I had been through, she immediately set up an appointment, got it tested, and that leads us to message number 3. On May 8th, 2020, about 5:30 p.m., I get a phone call from Vera. And she was sobbing. He had just gotten off the phone with her doctor, and they had said, we've run tests, and that bump on your breast is almost certainly breast cancer. I had just been through, at the age of 40, this 1 in 10,000 type of sarcoma. It's extraordinarily, really rare. They don't know the cause of it, and I'd gotten through it, and I think I'm ready for this next phase. And then this girl who I'm falling in love with gets diagnosed with breast cancer. And I immediately get calm and I say, okay, well, maybe there's meaning here. You have just been through this. Use everything that you've learned to help this incredible person through this incredibly hard time. And that was one of the hardest times in my life again, because I knew what it was like to face your mortality. And again, many of you out there, you maybe face this or people you love. And I had to watch the woman that I love go through it too. And I knew what it was like, how lonely it could feel and how scary it could feel. But I was determined to use everything that I learned to help her through it. And she had to have surgery and treatment. And this is us. Sorry, I'm getting emotional revisiting this, but this is us in one of the early things. It's me holding her hand through one of her first treatments and first, I don't know what that was before. And then she had chemo. And she had chemo during the height of the pandemic when COVID was raging and no one knew what was happening. She was immunocompromised, so that wasn't fun. And this is her going through chemo. And she lost her hair, of course. And that's, again, many of you out there, you can relate to this. It's like this really hard thing. This is us, Lake Tahoe, that summer. Me and her, Vera with her hair not there. So that was a really hard time, but I was able to draw on everything I've learned. My family was extraordinary. Her family was extraordinary. And as an estate plan attorney, I was able to help make sure we handled the logistical side and all that. I was trying to be as helpful as I could, but I went through this. But happily, we caught her cancer very early. So her prognosis was also amazing. Thank God I didn't have a loofah in my shower. So we caught it early. She did go through chemo, but it was preventative. It wasn't to cure something that had spread. So a year later, May 2021, we go back to Hawaii to celebrate our health and our life. Same spot we'd been, or same area we'd been in February of 2020, right before the pandemic and right before Vera had to go through her cancer journey. And I had an ulterior motive on that trip. You see, I wanted to propose to her. I wanted to make her my wife. And so I did. And this is a photo right after she said yes, accepting my proposal to be my wife on the beach in Kona in May of 2021. And this is a photo of us right after. So this is me and her, that's with the ring, and it was an extraordinary experience. It was one of the happiest moments of my life. We'd been through so much together. I mean, between the pandemic and then my cancer journey, her cancer journey, and going through this together and getting to a great place, it was amazing. And here's something that gave me chills when I was reviewing photos to put together for this. So if you recall, I had gotten the call that Vera had been diagnosed with breast cancer on May 8th, 2020 at about 5:30 p.m. I did not plan this, but when I proposed to her, it was May 8th, 2021, 5:30 p.m. Like the same time, almost exactly a year from that phone call. And to me, I didn't plan this. I didn't know the dates. I didn't know the time. I only realized that today. So I feel like there was some meaning to be had from that maybe this was all meant to be, that I was meant to go through my journey to help her through her journey. And we came full circle, from health to sickness back to health and now together. And I want to share that with the client community, with our general community. So I didn't plan it, but oh my God, that gave me chills. It was 1 year, almost to the minute, that I proposed to her from that first fateful phone call. So we, long story short, we got married April 30th of last year. This is us at the wedding. And Vera shared our story a little bit, and she shared her story from the very beginning. She was public with it. And I think one lesson I took from this is if you face this diagnosis, it's up to you to decide how much you share it. I didn't want to share it publicly, my journey. Vera shared hers publicly from the first moment of the first phone call to get friends and family involved. And there's value to both. There's no right or wrong answer. And then Vera shared it, and actually the New York Times, maybe some of you saw it, the New York Times actually wrote a little story about our journey in the mini vows section. So you can find our little article, just look up, Mark Gilfix, New York Times, Vera Golosker, and you'll find our story. So they put a little story. So that started to share our story with people that we loved and got an outpouring of really nice notes from friends and family. But I've been through this. I know what it's like. And I know how hard it is. And it's so hard to go through facing a serious medical diagnosis and then having to think about the legal and the financial and the insurance side of it. But I think through all of this, I just had this incredible sense of gratitude. It gave me just this reminder that life is so short and precious. Maybe you can relate to that. And Vera and I learned so much from the experience, so much wisdom and so much knowledge that helps me in how I work with clients today and how I can relate to those of you out there who are facing this and anticipating it. And Vera and I are so lucky. I want to emphasize, I'm good. You know, my prognosis went from shaky to exceptional. I'm pretty much in the clear. Vera is very close to that as well. We are healthy and we're working to build a life together, and we know we're not alone. And of course, our journey continues. And I want to share our story. And I hope if it helps anybody out there, you're not alone, and there's so much meaning you can take from these journeys. And if there's anybody in your life going through this, there are resources out there. You know, don't go through it alone. But it can be a really powerful experience. But it forces us to face our mortality and realize just how precious this time is. Thank you for spending time with me, and I hope you got something out of this.